Kurube. Yura yura. Yameda!
You've been lied to about Megumi Fushiguro. And the worst part, you wanted to believe it. The fandom calls him selfless. The story calls him potential. Both Gojo and Sukuna call him special. But what if I told you Megumi isn't a tragic hero crushed by fate? He's a psychological case study in moral cowardice disguised as virtue. This isn't a character defense. This is an autopsy. But before we begin, make sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to not miss any future uploads. Look, I get it. Megumi's quiet. He's restrained. He doesn't grandstand like Gojo or preach like Yuji. He just suffers beautifully, right? The boy with sad eyes and untapped potential. The one who deserves better. Except here's the thing. Megumi doesn't just suffer. He chooses suffering. Again. And again. And again. And we've been so busy mourning him that we never stop to ask the most important question. Why does he keep choosing to suffer? Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Megumi Fushiguro is not the moral anchor of Jujutsu Kaisen. He's a warning about what happens when passivity gets mistaken for goodness and self-destruction gets mistaken for love. Let me show you. First, let's lay out the narrative the fandom has built around Megumi. Because it's not wrong. It's just incomplete. The story goes like this. Megumi Fushiguro is a selfless protector born into tragedy. Abandoned by Toji, burdened by the Zenin name, raised in a system that sees him as a weapon, he saves people. He risks his life. He never asks for recognition. He just endures, quietly carrying the weight of everyone around him. And because he has so much potential, we're told that one day he'll break free. One day he'll unlock his full power. One day he'll be the strongest. Gojo says it. Sukuna says it. The narrative circles it like a prophecy. Megumi is tragic because the world won't let him bloom. Right? Wrong. You see, tragedy implies helplessness. It implies that forces beyond your control crush you, despite your best efforts. But Megumi isn't helpless. He's complicit. And once you notice the pattern, it's everywhere. Let's start with the thing fans love to quote as proof of his goodness. I don't want to save everyone. I want to save good people. On the surface, that sounds reasonable, even noble. He's not some naive idealist. He has standards. He's discerning. But think about what that actually means. Megumi doesn't operate on universal morality. He operates on curated compassion. His empathy has borders, and those borders are drawn by his personal comfort.
I hate bad people. They act so damn superior when their empathy and imagination are as empty as a vacant lot. I can't deal with good people either, because they forgive those bad people. And they view the act of forgiveness as a noble thing.
Contrast that with Yuji, who early on embodies a raw, messy, utilitarian impulse. Save people because they are people. No filters. No moral auditions. Megumi rejects that outright. He doesn't want to save everyone. He wants to save people who remind him of Sumiki. People who fit his internal definition of good. People who don't challenge his worldview. That's not altruism. That's selective empathy. And here's the kicker. It's not even subtext. It's his stated philosophy. Megumi tells us this. He owns it. But because he's quiet and pretty and traumatized, we frame it as depth instead of what it actually is. Moral exceptionalism. Megumi has decided his judgment is more valid than the system's, more important than collective safety, more righteous than protocol. And when his judgment leads to disaster, like saving Yuji and indirectly unleashing Sukuna on the world, does he recalibrate? No, he just suffers more beautifully. Let's talk about the moment that should have been a wake-up call. The cursed wool mark. Megumi, Yuji, and Nobara are trapped, outmatched. The situation is deteriorating fast. Megumi's solution? Summon Maharaga, a technique he knows will kill him. Now, the fandom frames this as heroism, sacrifice, the ultimate proof of his selflessness. But let's slow down and actually look at what happened. He didn't exhaust every option. He didn't coordinate with Nobara. He didn't attempt retreat. He didn't even wait to see if backup would arrive. He went straight to the suicide button. Why? Because death is easier than endurance. This isn't courage. It's self-erasure as problem-solving. He treats his own life as expendable currency. Not because it's the only option, but because it relieves him of long-term responsibility. If he dies, the problem dies with him. No prolonged guilt. No messy consequences. No having to live with failure. That's not tragic. That's avoidance. And it becomes a pattern. Shibuya is where the entire Jujutsu world collapses. Gojo is sealed. Curses rampage through the streets. Thousands die. And Megumi? Megumi is just there, central to the chaos, capable, aware. But does he assert leadership? Does he make the hard calls? Does he prioritize outcomes over emotional attachment? No. He operates reactively. He follows emotional pulls. He saves who's in front of him and avoids strategic command. Megumi is not sidelined by the narrative during Shibuya. He sidelines himself. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Megumi doesn't want to lead. Leadership requires decision-making. Decision-making requires commitment. Commitment requires the possibility of being wrong. And Megumi would rather die than be definitively wrong. So instead of stepping up, he stays in the background. He lets Gojo's absence define the moment. He lets Sukuna and the curses and the system decide history for him. Passive centrality. He's always there, but never fully present. Across multiple arcs, Megumi's go-to strategy under pressure is self-destruction. Cursed Womb? Mahoraga? Shibuya? Willing to sacrifice himself repeatedly. Culling game? Increasingly reckless. This isn't just bad luck or poor circumstances. This is a philosophy. He has internalized the belief that his life is worth less than the problem in front of him. Not because he's been forced into it, but because it's psychologically easier than living with ambiguity. And the fandom calls this selflessness. But selflessness implies you're giving something valuable for greater good. Megumi doesn't value his own life. So what exactly is he sacrificing? What he's actually doing is choosing absolution over accountability. If he dies, he doesn't have to face the long-term consequences of his decisions. He doesn't have to navigate moral gray areas. He doesn't have to risk being wrong and still alive. This is why potential becomes such a poisonous concept around Megumi. Let's talk about Megumi's potential. Gojo obsesses over it. So does Sukuna, and the fandom clings to it like a life raft. But here's the question nobody asks. What if his potential isn't blocked by circumstance? What if it's withheld by choice? Think about it. Megumi isn't prevented from acting decisively. He refuses to. He recognizes alternative paths. He understands strategic options. He has the intelligence and capability. And yet, again and again, he chooses minimal engagement. Not because he's paralyzed, because he's unwilling. As long as he's still growing or hasn't unlocked everything, he's shielded from the burden of full moral commitment. He gets to stay in the safe zone of incompleteness. He never has to risk failing at his peak. Here's the thing. Power is responsibility. If you have the capacity to act and you refuse to wield it decisively, that's not tragic. It's ethical abdication. Megumi has a broken, reality-warping technique. He has tactical genius. He has people who believe in him. And he chooses repeatedly to stay small. Not because he's oppressed. Not because he lacks opportunity. But because becoming means being seen. And being seen means risking judgment. And risking judgment means he might not measure up to the version of himself everyone projects onto him. So instead, he stays potential, eternally unfinished, eternally excused. And we call that tragedy. You want to know why Megumi is the way he is? It's not Sukuna. It's not the Zenin clan. It's not even Gojo. It began in a childhood where love was translated wrong. Toji, the transactional father. Toji didn't just abandon Megumi. He sold him, literally, for money, to the Zenin clan. This wasn't a father making an impossible choice. This was a transaction, a child converted to currency. Toji had his reasons, twisted as they were. Perhaps he believed he was setting Megumi up for survival in a brutal world. But intentions don't erase impact, and what Megumi learned in that moment shaped everything that followed. I have a price tag. My value is conditional. If I'm useful, maybe I won't be discarded again. Children abandoned by force typically respond in two ways: rebellion against the system or internalization, becoming so useful that abandonment can't happen again. Megumi chose the second path. He didn't dream of freedom or justice. He dreamed of not being thrown away. That singular fear became the architecture of his entire personality. Then there was Tsumiki. The fandom speaks of Megumi's devotion to his stepsister as pure, and it is. Devastatingly, destructively pure. But Tsumiki didn't just become his motivation. She became his moral outsourcing, the external compass he used to navigate a world he couldn't trust. Megumi never asked himself what is right. He asked, what would keep Tsumiki safe? She became his emotional regulator, his ethical framework, his reason for existing. This prevented him from developing something crucial, an internal moral foundation. His empathy became selective and derivative. He saved good people because Tsumiki was good. He judged the world not on principle, but on resemblance to her kindness. His morality wasn't built on conviction. It was borrowed wholesale from the only person who'd never abandoned him. When Tsumiki fell into a cursed coma, Megumi didn't just lose a sister. He lost his justification for surviving, his borrowed sense of meaning, the last witness to his childhood self. Everything after was psychological freefall. Then there was Gojo, who loved Megumi in his own particular way. Gojo saw potential, strength, a successor who could survive the brutal system they inhabited. But Megumi, filtered through abandonment, heard something different. You are valuable because of what you can become. Your technique matters more than you do. This misunderstanding was catastrophic, and Gojo never corrected it. He never said the words that might have changed everything. I didn't save you for your technique. I saved you because you're a child who deserved better. Instead, silence. Megumi filled that silence with the only logic he knew: utility. Potential became poison. Not a gift, but a burden. He internalized that being loved was contingent on becoming useful first. Not loved for who he was, but for what he might become. That's not hope. That's conditional existence. Then Yuji entered his life. And Megumi encountered something terrifying, someone unapologetically moral. Yuji saved people without ranking them. Yuji accepted guilt without self-erasure. Yuji chose responsibility even when it hurt, and Megumi resented him for it. Because Yuji represented the path Megumi had refused, Yuji proved that Megumi's philosophy was a choice, not a necessity. To acknowledge that would mean admitting he could have chosen differently all along. So Megumi kept his distance, retreating from the uncomfortable mirror Yuji represented. By the culling game, we're watching the collapse of a structure never meant to stand. A boy abandoned by his father who learned he was disposable, anchored to a sister who became his outsourced morality. Loved unclearly by a mentor who equated affection with potential. Surrounded by peers who lived loudly while he retreated inward. Megumi's passivity wasn't weakness. It was a survival strategy developed in childhood that had overstayed its welcome. The tragedy wasn't that the world broke him, it was that he never learned how to build himself. And that's why Sukuna chose Megumi and not Yuji, not because of power. They both possessed tremendous strength. It was about psychology. Sukuna needed someone whose soul wouldn't fight back. Someone who had already vacated, when Tsumiki died. When Megumi was forced to kill her possessed body with his own hands, his psyche shattered. His entire identity had been scaffolded on saving her. With her gone, there was nothing left. No internal reason to fight. No self-worth protecting. Sukuna didn't conquer Megumi. He inherited a space already abandoned. Megumi had chosen to disappear before Sukuna made it literal. Megumi is complicit in his own tragedy. That doesn't make him unsympathetic, but if we frame him as purely a passive victim, we miss the point. Megumi is a mirror reflecting what happens when trauma becomes identity, when potential becomes a hiding place, when passivity gets mistaken for virtue. He shows us what you get when someone is so afraid of being wrong that they choose not to be anything at all. The saddest part? Megumi had every tool to become something extraordinary. He had people who loved him. He had power, he had intelligence. What he didn't have was the will to choose himself. Not over others, but equally. To say, I matter too. What if Megumi's tragedy isn't that the world failed him, but that he failed himself? And he did it so quietly, with such apparent grace, that we mistook self-annihilation for sacrifice. Megumi Fushiguro isn't a symbol of purity crushed by fate. He's a portrait of what happens when inaction is mistaken for goodness, self-destruction for love, and potential becomes refuge from the terrifying responsibility of actually living. His story is the tragedy of a boy who chose to disappear long before anyone noticed he was gone. A disappearance so gradual, so seemingly noble that even he didn't recognize it as a choice until Sukuna made it permanent. Megumi's greatest enemy wasn't the Zenin clan or fate or even the king of curses. It was the belief, planted in childhood and nurtured through every abandonment and conditional love, that his existence needed justification rather than being inherently worth preserving. And that belief killed him, long before Sukuna ever did. Hey, before you go, I talk about characters not just as fighters or heroes, but as people shaped by systems, trauma, and impossible choices. If you like this breakdown, if it made you think a little differently about Megumi, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel and ring the notification bell to not miss any future uploads. Drop a comment and tell me which character's psychology you want me to break down next, from JJK or any other anime. Thanks for watching.